Hi there, I'm Dennis Lamoureux, Professor of Science and Religion at St. Joseph's College in the University of Alberta. I want to thank you for your interest in my introductory course that explores the various ways in which we can relate science and religion. In this brief episode, I'm going to give you a summary of each of the main topics in the course. We begin with a brief introduction and deal immediately with the common perception of the relationship between science and religion, which sees them as being entrenched in a never-ending conflict. This diagram depicts the warfare relationship of science and religion. A majority of people today assume that there are only two credible ways to look at the world. In other words, there is a deeply ingrained dichotomy in the minds of many people. One is either on the so-called side of science or the so-called side of religion. And note my quotation marks. One accepts either evolution or creation, and sadly some assume that science and evolution are godless. But throughout this course, we are going to challenge this dichotomy and suggest that there are many intellectually credible middle ground positions between these common perceptions. In this section entitled Categories and Principles, I will introduce some basic terms and concepts used in science and religion. We need to standardize the terminology so that we don't talk past one another. In particular, I will encourage you to move away from the common understanding of terms and use academic definitions. Let me offer you an example. The common understanding of the term evolution is that it is connected to atheism. Similarly, for many people, the word creation refers to the origin of the world in just 6 literal days 6,000 years ago. As you can appreciate, these common categories trap people in the evolution versus creation dichotomy, and this often leads to science and religion warfare. However, the academic definition of the word evolution refers to a scientific theory describing the origin of life through natural processes. The academic definition of the term creation is that it is a religious belief that the world was made by a creator without mentioning the method of creation. By using these definitions, we can move beyond the common belief that there are just two positions on origins, either atheistic evolution or six-day creation. Therefore, it is perfectly reasonable to accept the scientific theory of evolution and also to believe in a creator. If you hold this view, as I do, then you are both an evolutionist and a creationist. This view of origins is known as evolutionary creation. So you can see that with academic categories and principles, we widen the range of possibilities so that you can make informed choices regarding your personal beliefs. In this section on categories and principles, I will also begin to introduce the first of 18 hermeneutical principles. The term hermeneutics refers simply to the rules used for interpreting a written work, like a book. A long-standing issue in science and religion is whether the Bible reveals some basic scientific facts. Or to cast this as a question, is the Bible a book of science? In order to answer this critical question, we will focus on passages in the Bible that deal with the natural world. For example, this is a sketch of the three-tier universe. We will try to see if this ancient understanding of the structure of the world appears in the Bible. My students tell me that learning hermeneutical principles is the best part of my course. This is a course on the relationship between science and religion, and before we can consider how the two relate, we need a basic understanding of what each of these are about. In this section entitled What is Religion?, I will offer various definitions of religion from different academic disciplines, such as religious studies, psychology, and philosophy. It's important to mention that these examples come from scholars who hold a variety of personal beliefs, from religious to non-religious. In my opinion, it's important that you examine as many different views as possible. In this way, you'll be able to form your personal understanding of what religion is. Similarly, in What is Science?, we'll attempt to develop a definition of science. Again, I'll present a variety of different examples, such as ancient science, modern science, and postmodern science. From these, you'll be able to begin outlining your own definition of science. Now that you will be equipped with some basic definitions regarding the terms science and religion, I'll introduce you to some models and relationships between them. It's important to understand that a model attempts to include as many relationships as possible, along with those we don't accept. In this section, we will examine the science-religion models of two pioneers during the 1990s who set down the foundations of the new academic dialogue between science and religion. John Hott's model of science and religion has four basic relationships, which he terms conflict, contrast, contact, and confirmation. Hott's personal position rejects conflict, and then he integrates elements of contrast, contact, and confirmation. Over the years, many of my students have found John Hott's approach to relating science and religion to be very helpful. Another pioneer in science and religion is Ian Barbour. His model of science and religion also has four basic relationships, which he labels conflict, independence, dialogue, and integration. Similar to John Hott, Barbour's personal position rejects the conflict relationship, and then he incorporates parts of his independence, dialogue, and integration relationships. As you'll discover in this section, there are a wide variety of ways to relate science and religion, and I will encourage you to combine any of these relationships as you develop your own personal position. The next section of the course deals with the fascinating topic of intelligent design and natural revelation. When you look at nature, does the beauty, complexity, and functionality give you the impression or inkling that it's been designed by some sort of creative intelligence? If you do, then you believe in intelligent design and the traditional religious belief that nature is a revelation that points to a creator. Let me offer you an example. When you look at these stunning images of the heavens, do they inspire you to believe that there is a creative mind behind the natural world? Psalm 19 in the Bible is the classic verse that supports intelligent design. It states, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies proclaim the work of his hands." From your perspective, do you agree with Psalm 19 that the heavens call out that there is a creator? Throughout this course, I attempt to present as many sides of a topic as possible. In this section on intelligent design, we will examine the views of Richard Dawkins, who is the most important atheist in the world today. In his famous book, The Blind Watchmaker, he argues that intelligent design in nature is nothing but an illusion. Do you agree with Dawkins, or do you disagree with him and think that he's wrong? In the next three sections of the course, we will turn to history and see if we can draw some lessons regarding science and religion that can be applied today. We will begin with astronomy and the Galileo affair. To be sure, there were religious people who attacked Galileo for his scientific discoveries. And regrettably, Galileo is often seen as the symbol of science and religion warfare. However, we don't often hear that Galileo also had a firm belief in God and the Bible. Galileo was not only a great scientist, but he had an amazing understanding of the relationship between science and religion, which he outlines in his 1615 letter to the Grand Duchess Christina. In addition, Galileo's approach to interpreting the Bible was truly remarkable. For example, he wrote, "The intention of the Holy Spirit in the Bible is to teach us how one goes to heaven and not how heaven goes. In other words, the Bible deals with religious matters and not scientific issues like astronomy." Our next historical section deals with geology and the biblical flood. Over the years, I've found that this topic is the most challenging issue in the course for religious students. You might be surprised to know that only 300 years ago, geologists believed in Noah's worldwide flood, and it was part of their science. But the belief in the global flood slowly disappeared from geology. And as you'll see, there are some valuable lessons from this historical account for us today. In this section, we will discover that there are over 300 flood accounts spread across the world. Let me ask you a couple questions. Is this evidence that there really was a global flood, with only a few people saved in Noah's Ark, and as they repopulated the earth, the story of a global flood was spread everywhere? Or is there another explanation for all these flood stories? To give you a hint, think about the geography of where these accounts appear. Our final historical section deals with evolution and Darwin's religious beliefs. Regrettably, many people today assume that Charles Darwin and his theory of biological evolution was ultimately atheistic. But in this section, we will challenge this common misperception by exploring Darwin's books, his notes, and his personal letters. For example, in his most famous book, On the Origin of Species, Charles Darwin affirms his belief in a creator who used evolution to create living organisms. And later in life, Darwin reveals that he also believed in intelligent design when he wrote this book. And in one of Darwin's most fascinating letters, he writes to John Fordyce, "It seems to me absurd to doubt that a man or a woman may be an ardent theist, that is, a firm believer in a personal God, and an evolutionist." So, in just one short sentence, Charles Darwin completely destroys the science versus religion and evolution versus creation dichotomies. In other words, the father of the theory of evolution states that it is perfectly reasonable to believe in God and to accept biological evolution. The interpretation of Genesis 1 to 11 and the biblical accounts of origins is a critical topic in developing a peaceful and fruitful relationship between science and religion. Many religious people today assume that these chapters outline some basic scientific and historical facts regarding the origin of the universe and living organisms, including humans. But is this the correct interpretation of the opening chapters of the Bible? Take, for example, the first chapter of the Bible in Genesis 1 and the six-day creation account. It features a poetic structure that is termed parallel panels. In the first panel of 3 days, God brings form to the world by separating light from darkness, waters above from waters below, and dry land from water. In the second panel of 3 days, God fills the world. On the fourth day, he creates the sun, moon, and stars in alignment with light on day 1. God makes birds on the fifth day to fill the airspace on day 2, and also fish for the sea. And the creation of land animals and humans on day 6 matches the dry land of the third day. In the light of this poetic structure in Genesis 1, does this creation account strike you as being science or history? What do you think? Nearly every course on science and religion deals with the modern origins debate. In this section, we will challenge directly the evolution versus creation dichotomy and demonstrate that there are far more than just two simple positions on origins. I will present the 5 best-known views. Young Earth creation believes that the world was created in 6 literal days, just 6,000 years ago. Progressive creation asserts that the universe is very old and that God intervenes miraculously to create living organisms at different times. Evolutionary creation claims that a personal God created the world through evolution. In contrast, deistic evolution believes an impersonal God who created the world through evolution. This is a God who does not interact with humans. And finally, atheistic evolution asserts that the world arose through blind chance and that we are nothing but an unintended fluke of nature. In this section on origins, we will also explore the always controversial issue of human origins. In particular, we will ask the question, who was Adam? He is the first man specifically mentioned in the Bible. Was he a real person? Or is Adam a representative of many people? Or is he a figurative character in an allegory? To be sure, this topic will be especially challenging to many religious people. The final section of the course deals with the long-standing issue of the problem of evil. The existence of evil in the world is a serious argument against the belief in a personal God who is all-loving and all-powerful. For example, why would this God allow the murder of 6 million Jews by the Nazis during World War II? Or closer to our topic of science and religion, why would a personal God use the vicious and competitive process of evolution to create living organisms? I will be the first to admit that there's no easy answer to these questions, but in this section, we'll consider some possibilities. So that's a brief summary of each of the topics in my course on science and religion. Students over the years have found the topic of science and religion to be ideal in developing their personal beliefs and worldview. Hopefully, you will too. So, I want to thank you for listening to this video, and also thank you for considering my course. End of episode